Okay. How are you?
I'm doing good. Busy day, world of corporate law and all the good stuff.
I know, I can only imagine the the variety of problems that come up. Do you want to
Mhm.
tell everyone a little bit about the arc of your career so they can know your perspective?
The arc of my career is, I don't know, I guess you would describe it not quite as an arc, but kind of a series of up and downs. I actually graduated from Northwestern Law in Chicago back in 1996, so a
That's
long time
incredible.
ago.
That's quite a school.
Love Chicago, good town, but I left for Phoenix, which is where I was raised. Ended up coming back to Phoenix and jumped back into legal practice. I actually worked in education for almost 15 years after law school. I know that sounds funny, but I was a consultant and I
Wow.
traveled. I worked for predominantly school districts. Teacher training. So it was a very weird arc. I went to law school, became an entrepreneur, had a team of consultants, really enjoyed that. But the travel was significant, although I did get to go all over the world, and that was good, and all over the United
Oh,
States, which I kind of actually have these good memories of visiting very rural parts of Texas and Florida, and getting caught up and being chased by dogs in the middle of the random areas, and gotten a couple of tornadoes. It was all sorts of really
wow.
interesting times when this was really pre-internet, so it was also kind of lonely.
Yeah.
So because we didn't have the things even in the early 2000s, it wasn't like it was great internet. So anyway,
No.
I ended up getting a buddy of mine. I was doing the sport of jujitsu, and that's a whole nother story. I
Oh,
started
we got
doing.
to talk about that. I used to be at Sarah Jiu-Jitsu in Long Island for a while. Matt
Oh
Sarah.
wow, great, Matt
Yeah.
Sarah, great guy, great guy. Yeah. Well, well, I ended up getting into jujitsu and martial arts in general after a bad incident back in Chicago back in
Oh,
'97. So that's another story. But anyway, so I started doing that, and a buddy of mine who was in jujitsu actually had his neck broken,
ooh,
herniated
ooh.
by a chiropractor who was operating out of the gym. So it was a very great you know, and it was an interesting case. So he said to me, "Hey, will you take the case?" And I was like, "Well, I'll think about it." And I ended up associating with an attorney in Arizona. The case was successful. I mean, he had a full recovery. So as you know,
Oh,
sometimes
great.
the better you are off physically, the less you get from the
Yeah.
other side. So then I did a lot of plaintiff's work in those first few years in returning to practice in Arizona. The cases were all very different, all very weird. A lot of sort of justice cases, trying to help people out to do, to right a wrong, I guess. I was fairly motivated by that kind of, still am by what motivates I think a lot of plaintiffs attorneys, which is helping individuals out against predominantly institutions.
Yeah.
However, I ended up switching, I guess, to the dark side, but it's not really the dark side. I ended up going into corporal, to becoming a general counsel for a corporation, actually out of a connection I made in jujitsu. And so I now presently work for a staffing company, which means we provide like temporary labor in terms of construction or to hospitals, nurses, doctors, even lawyers, and all sorts of other staffing sort of entities that's out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's we have operations nationwide. So I became in-house rather than doing plaintiff's work, and who knows? You never know where it'll end up. But that was kind of the arc of the career, uh, sort of not directly going into law right after law school, then starting as a plaintiff's lawyer and doing all sorts of cases and taking what comes in the door, and that happened to be a lot of very weird stuff, and then finally going to the corporate side of things and seeing kind of what was beyond, it's like what's on the other side of the curtain, and
Right.
that's the arc.
Yeah. And I think your career arc is so valuable for this channel's listeners because you were plaintiff side, you did a lot of employment, a lot of justice-based work. And then, and I always joke with my listeners that the defense attorneys, and you're in-house, it's very different, but I joke the defense attorneys are not your enemy. They're the people who cut your check. They're the people processing your money, how I look at it, right? But of course, clients tend to view them as their tormentors, their opponents, right? But in-house, I mean, you're going to bring this plaintiff's plaintiff's attorney perspective to in-house. And I think for them to hear how you looked at a case as a plaintiff's attorney versus how you look at it and how you approach it as an in-house counsel, I think that value is tremendous for them, right? Because they're not really able to put themselves in your shoes and see what you see, or or your perspective.
I think it's less a matter of, some deep insight into the law or into, some like database of information, which everybody assumes that in-house counsel have, or the attorneys who work with in-house counsel. But and that may be the case in other organizations, but my general observation is that the key insight I can give is what it's like to have to deal with the different kind of internal constituencies of a corporation, because they're made up of people, just like a law firm is made up of people, just like an employer is made up of people. And when you know what that dynamic is like, you can kind of better figure out where information is likely going to be kept relevant to your case. And oftentimes, believe it or not, it's not like the corporation, everybody's on the same page and knows where the hidden document is. Absolutely not. It's like half the people don't even know how to use Microsoft Office, So,
Yeah.
and I mean,
It's
I'm not
amazing,
talking about
right?
my organization, but I'm just saying there are people with limited technical skills. They really don't know how to find a document. The subsidiaries or the leadership, and again, this is not, I'm just talking writ large, sometimes doesn't really agree with each other, right? So when you sort of cast an aspersion upon corporations as being these monolithic entities out to defeat your claim and everybody's conspiring together, you're giving them a lot of credit. You're
Yeah.
assuming that they have this incredibly organized, hierarchical community of people who all have the same interests. And sometimes they don't necessarily like each other, but they have to work together. Sometimes they are friends, and that can create issues, or that can be beneficial. It's more complicated. So before you go out and say, the people on the other side are all malevolent, conspiring, they're really just oftentimes people. Now, there are pressures to try to get settle a case as quickly as you can for the least you can. But I mean, that's no different than probably most of the people who watch this channel as like consumers. They go in someplace and they're like, I want to get the best quality and the cheapest price. The interests on the corporation side are generally to resolve the matter as inexpensively as possible. And sometimes that's actually to the benefit of the of the plaintiff, in the sense that the corporation often wants an early resolution too, and sometimes they will resolve to your favor a claim which actually may not have as much merit as as I think an objective person would say. So it's a mixed bag, right? Like on one hand, there are the resources of a corporation and the interest and the pressure to not spend all the money on legal stuff. But on the other hand, because they want to resolve things quickly, sometimes they're more like, let's just get rid of this and settle, even though if you were looking at justice wise, you might say that person really didn't deserve, what we're offering to them. And they're like, yeah, but it's the most expeditious way of getting this out of our hair. So it's mix and match, it's good things and bad things.
And that's always a hard conversation to have with a client when you're like, listen, this settlement offer, it's probably more than we can win. And the client looks at you like you're a jerk, right? And it's like, no, here's why. And you really dig into it. And the client's like, wait, I can get more now with no risk? It's hard to believe sometimes, right?
Oh, no. I mean, yeah. And I mean, to put one of the things that, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about and just share is that on the plaintiff side, on the corporate side, since responsibility is diffuse, like usually what's happened is the corporation had screwed up in some department. Maybe it didn't pay the employee. Maybe it had a manager who's a little too flirtatious. Maybe it has, some compliance thing that they never filled out. You never know where the screw up lay. But in general, it's kind of everybody and nobody is responsible, right?
Yeah.
Whereas on the other side of things, for the plaintiff, the actual person who has the problem and has experienced the wrong, they have to be in it alone. Essentially, the only person standing by their side is somebody like you or me when I was working with them, and it's a lonely journey. and you feel the weight of it. And so I have a great deal of empathy for plaintiffs. I understand why they're carrying the weight of everything that they experience. Generally, they're not particularly legally knowledgeable. I understand why they feel the way they do. I understand, but you are carrying that all the way into a trial, perhaps. And that's a lot of weight. I think there's a psychic cost that, I mean, if I had, I wish both as a lawyer and I haven't been a plaintiff per se, but I wish as an attorney, or I wish for other plaintiffs that they would also recognize the psychic cost that comes from carrying this thing around your neck for 2 or 3 years if you're going to go to trial. Not that I'm against going to trial. I think it's great. Do it if you have the facts in front of you that are going to let you prevail. But even if you have a lot of the good facts on your side, and then you're very committed to your cause, you got to say to yourself, wait a minute, we could be at this for 2, 3, 4 years. We got a decent settlement offer, maybe not the best, maybe not as much as we'd like. It's not like this, massive victory. But then we can resolve it pretty quick and not spend 3, 4 years, sometimes looking for future dates and dealing with motions and meeting up with your attorney and dealing with opposing counsel. And, and that can go, I mean, in 3 and 4 years, people can have health issues, marital problems, other expenses of time and interest. And you got to kind of look at it from sort of a holistic life point of view. Do you want to spend the next 1 to 4 years carrying this cross? And if you're okay with that and you're 100% committed, then when I was a plaintiff's guy, I'm like 100%, I'm 1,000% behind you. Let's do this. But if you're just thinking in the next 3 weeks time, and you're not thinking, longer frame, then I think you're not calculating the entire cost, including the psychic cost of maintaining your case. So there's kind of a mixed approach here that I think people need to recognize. And again, it's not to dissuade anybody from taking a case, but corporations, I mean, they can let cases linger for years, and people come and go, and it kind of becomes more diffuse, if it makes sense. So you're carrying all the weight. Meanwhile, the corporation is like, I don't know, Sally quit, Bill got fired. You're not even dealing with the same team of people who actually did the original wrong sometimes, right? They're long gone. They've been moved on to different pastures because maybe their subsidiary didn't do so well financially. So you're still angry at them, and the them you were angry at that is not there. That can happen.
Yeah. And it happens very often. I always use the language, hey, this is the first non-insulting offer.
Right.
And I'm not telling you to take it, but I am telling you, I'm going to stop begging you not to take it. I'm going to stop saying, please don't take this. This is not good. This is not right. Like, we should go further. And people will look at me, and it's almost like there's a sense of betrayal there. And I'm like, like I'm not advising them. And it's like, no. I hate the attorney to tell you, take it now. Right. It's like, no, this is your life. This is your trauma. This is what you went through. It's your choice. I'm just telling you, we're in the realm of what could be reasonable now.